thank you so much for joining us today. Before we kick this off, I do want to point out to the audience that we welcome questions. So please utilize the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Type in questions as they come up, and we will get to those at the conclusion of today's fireside chat. So I'd now like to turn this over to Steven Saltzstein, Force Family Office's CEO.
You know, I'm not sure everyone saw this, but Land Rover, I think it was Land Rover in England had a cyber attack, and it was one of the English car companies. It was either Land Rover or somebody else. I totally apologize, but it was one of the largest cyber attacks in the history of technology, to the point where the English government had to come in and guarantee a $2 billion loan. And what's so great about CloudCover is they have a mechanism to take every single data packet, okay, and ensure every data packet so that, you know, these companies do not have this cyber risk. And what's also interesting about that is when you break down this information into these small data packets, it then becomes tradable. So those of you that are looking for investments that can kind of change the world in the future, imagine this is 10 years ago and somebody said to you, hey, have you ever heard of the company Uber? This is what CloudCover is doing in cybersecurity. So it is my great pleasure to welcome Stefan Cardo, and their great family office investor, Peter Lacey. To begin with, Peter, if you don't mind, do you mind telling folks about yourself and then, you know, how you got involved in CloudCover?
Sure. Yeah, we're from Canada. We're Alberta, Canada, and we're a small family office. Just my son and I kind of run the office. But anyways, we saw the, you know, basically the IoT originally and all the devices that were out there. And I came from had a chain of John Deere equipment stores and felt that there was a need for that. There still is. And but more so, Alberta's becoming a real data center sort of hub with the opportunity. There's lots of natural gas, lots of energy, fairly relatively timely approvals and that sort of thing. And you know, the amount of data that's going to be circling around the globe here is going to be 10 times probably in 5 years from now from what it is today, and that much more data is going to be that much more risk, and the consequences of not having tight cybersecurity, and it will all need to be insured, and that's a pretty fragmented market because insurance companies have no way of measuring the risk, and I think our product will really make a difference in being able for insurance companies to assess that risk. So that's why I've, you know, been a longtime shareholder and quite excited about the future opportunities.
So did you get involved with the company before there was a whole discussion around AI?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Been involved for about 5 years now. So
yeah. So I'm impressed. I mean, I congratulate you on your prescient vision, you know, for getting involved in a company that, you know, right place, right time. And once the whole concept of AI really came to the forefront, it showed, you know, that CloudCover, what they do is so much more needed than it's ever been.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. So, all right, that's fantastic. Thank you. Stefan, how are you?
I'm great. Fine.
Good. Good. Do us a favor. Tell us about CloudCover's current business model from your perspective.
Well, like Peter was saying, CloudCover actually is, you know, a cybersecurity platform as a cyber insurance solution. We do both the risk-aware control side of the business of cybersecurity, tracking data through network, protecting the perimeter edge of a network or a company or corporation. But we also are able to actually track the transmission of the data from point to point and wherever it's sent. And we are able to actually apply a policy to each data packet, literally. In essence, able to provide not just security and protection, but a risk transfer capability for the cloud, for the edge of a network, the IoT environments that Peter was referring to, which are obviously affecting autonomous vehicles, autonomous transportation, smart cities. The future is basically greenfield for us in that space.
So, just describe it in a little bit more detail, ensuring every data packet, just so people really understand.
Well, we patented basically the concept of data insurance quite a ways back. And when I mean ways back, I mean 2 decades ago, when I was working on online banking. And I was building the very first online banks in the world. Riggs Bank in Washington, D.C., Barnett Bank, one of the banks that you now know called Wells Fargo, the early days of that. And that was in the 90s. And the idea of insuring data was basically something that we would be able to, i.e., use tracking mechanisms, which is basically packet, I guess I would call it detection. And the idea of security was always the forefront of, i.e., cybersecurity in that moment of time. Fast forward, got involved with blockchain very, very early. Was one of the early stage community participants at Ethereum. And I introduced the idea of blockchain to the insurance industry in 2011, 2012. You put those two together, and the idea of underwriting and insuring data at the packet level made more than just sense. It made absolutely necessary requirement in the future of what we call the digital information age today. Data is just exploding. So I saw basically the essence of being able to take the data at the packet level and stain the packet with a SHA-256 hash uniquely onto the header of each packet. Whether it's egress or ingress, doesn't make any difference. We're able to not just simply understand where the data moves and how it moves, but how fast it got there, whether there was a man in the middle, or somebody actually slowed it down, tried to copy it. That would be called latency. And we were able to actually detect all the other anomalies that are actually associated with traffic, network anomalies itself, as well as what we call the industrial Internet of Things, which is basically devices that are actually, they don't have any kind of memory on them. They have a sensor, that's what they are. And basically, we're able to identify the first hop or the first transmission from that sensor device onto the network, where you do see data at the packet level, and we're able to track it.
Where exactly does the concept of the blockchain, right? The blockchain is the idea of it is like, is each packet a block? And
no,
and okay, yeah,
no,
explain that a bit further.
blockchain is basically a recording system. The idea of blockchain is being used and appropriated for lots of different things in the world of cryptocurrency and what's called
But I mean in regards to
immutable.
CloudCover, I apologize. Yes.
We basically use it as an immutable, decentralized recording system.
Okay.
Whereby immutable, meaning that once it's been recorded, it cannot be changed, it cannot be hacked. And we are actually engaged with a group out of Canada that is also taking us across the pond over to Europe as well as Asia Pacific region. And we're building a global infrastructure. And this global infrastructure is basically a global decentralized system. This system is basically able to not just record the data at the packet level, but the insurance policy that goes with the data. So the insurance policy basically opens and closes as soon as the transaction transmission occurs, meaning it opens and closes within 500 to 800 milliseconds. It's travel insurance for data, per se. So this has never been accomplished before. Nobody's figured out how to do this. We have. And what we are actually going to be able to take it a step further is be able to translate that idea of risk in terms of data into a valuation, a monetization of data. Because you can wrap an insurance wrapper around the actual value of the intangible asset, the data packet. You're able to actually potentially value that asset onto a corporate balance sheet. You also are able to actually record that in such a way where it can be used as an exchange system, i.e. Basically trading risk.
Can I ask a quick question, which is, so you have these patents.
Yes.
So, I mean, I assume that means there's Fortune 500 companies infringing on your patents.
Well, yes, there are. We had a number of, I'd say, the early days of what they call security orchestration, automation. And that's a term that's been called SOAR by the Gartner people. We had the first SOAR patents in 2007, 2009, and 2011. And there's about 50 plus very large organizations that are currently infringing on them right now. But, we're not all about trolling. We're about
No,
basically
I know you're
getting out
not.
in front of the.
But
Yeah.
I want to uncover value at the company. So are you prosecuting these patents now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I know. And if someone looks at your valuation, I imagine, I'm willing to bet that your IP isn't really part of the valuation calculus, or is it?
Well, we factored it into, I guess I would say it's a percentage of our overall value. And I said the percentage is a minority position, probably a 15 to 20% position. But if you add on the value of a potential, I guess you'd call it an infringement award environment, the value of the company basically, is up into the stratosphere. So, I mean, what we're trying to accomplish here is basically approaching these large organizations that, quite frankly, I mean, with all due respect, they're protecting Land Rovers. They're protecting the corporate industry, and they're still getting hacked. The reason why is they've been doing the same thing over and over again and not really changing the method and ways they are able to protect data. We are different. We look at it completely in another different perspective or point of view. And we believe, based upon some of the penetration testing systems that we've actually engaged with the Department of Defense and a number of other very large organizations like RIT and Stanford and some other major organizations called MITRE, we've passed all the penetration tests, and they couldn't get in whatsoever. We even went to the Colorado systems in, I guess you call it the command structure in Colorado Springs. And we were actually put on a stage and made supposedly a target. We brought our device with us. It's about the size of a sugar cube, because the software actually is so small. It's mathematically, algorithms, if you will. To this day, we've re-engineered it into a much more robust and faster and more succinct system and solution where we can deploy it into any environment: cloud, telecommunication, small devices, sensors, IoT.
Right. So do me one favor, which is kind of take me through a theoretical conversation with a chief technology officer, chief security officer, chief legal officer of, let's say, a Fortune 500 company, right? Because I'm sure, like, if you go to, let's just say, Ford Motor Company, right? You go to one of these Fortune 500s and say, hey, you guys are now trying to mitigate cybersecurity risks this way, but we can help you think about it in a different way and make it much more effective.
Okay, so the current cybersecurity industry is, in my opinion, trying to actually eat the elephant. They're trying to do everything. They're trying to sell the, security operating center capabilities, the tool sets that go with them. Humans basically are available to come in and help you configure their solution for your network in a customized way. And that's, basically all about income, revenue, profit. And that's clearly an understandable position to be in. But what they're not accomplishing or figuring out is that it comes down to what's called incrementalism. When you actually take the network and you're able to put a piece of software or solution like us into a company's network, it can actually track and see within a 72-hour period, get a picture of your entire network and the data traffic flow. And unlike the other organizations that, they're starting to learn that that's basically what they're going to have to do. we've actually got a way of doing it in such a way where we can actually identify the risk of that traffic, both egress and ingress, meaning inside the network as well as outside the network coming in, or distributed denial of service attacks, brute force attacks, for example. We actually can risk score all that environment and be able to actually deploy, I guess I would say, protections where you need it. Sometimes you have too much protection where you don't really require it. You just need enough to protect that particular IP point or that particular IoT device. And the rest of the network is basically, exposed or open. We're able to focus on certain points of the network uniquely
And
and
so will that
incrementally.
bring down, will that make insurance much more efficient and bring down the cost of insurance?
That's where I was going to. Yeah. Because what you can do is basically identify the value of risk or the cost of risk of protecting, and more efficiently, more effectively in terms of resources, in terms of being able to decide whether you need a piece of hardware to protect an environment versus a piece of software. And then there's cloud, and then there's private cloud, and then there's public cloud. And then there's cloud of clouds, they call it. That's when you have, AWS talking to Microsoft and Microsoft talking to Google. And a lot of times corporate is not really in control of their data anymore. You've got AI basically in control. And if you can't keep an eye on the data, and that's really where the key is, the incremental transaction transmission of data at the packet level, and you focus on that, everything else, really, quite frankly, is easier or much more capable of being protected.
So talk to me about your strategic priorities. Like, what is your vision for the next kind of 5 years?
Well, there's this, I guess you've heard this term, land and expand, or acquire beachfront. We've been, I guess I would say, a little reserved in doing that, but now we're leaning in. We've actually done a significant amount of R&D over the last 5 years, making sure that what we're making is actually hardened. It's good. It's strong. It's nearly unhackable per se, because we're going to be putting insurance behind it and reinsurance behind it. We need to make sure that it actually not only works, but it's almost infallible. Now, that's kind of a big word to use in the world of cybersecurity, because everybody's not infallible. It's just they're near, just good enough. We believe it's possible to go into the telecommunication infrastructure, i.e., all the telcos in the planet. We've got a relationship with a very large organization that to this day is where most of the telcos land and take their standards from. And we're going back to them. And we've been in touch with them for the last 2 years. And with this raise that we're accomplishing right now, and the insurance raise we're doing next year, something north of 50 to maybe close to $100 million, just to get a seat at the table, they call it, for the insurance industry, we will be able to license our entire solution to the entire telcos and the insurance industry. And maybe even the cybersecurity companies will actually want to license the solution, because they're going to be looking at their stuff and looking at ours. And they talk this talk called AI this and AI that and ML this and ML that. But do they really, truly actually know what they're doing? I mean, yes,
Right.
they do. They're smart. They're very, very sharp people. But they've just been looking at the same problem over and over and coming with the same answer. And that's why you have the data breaches till this day. They still occur
Yeah.
when large organizations like Palo
Yeah.
Alto and
I mean,
Fortinet,
yeah.
they're protecting the crown jewels, and they're still getting breached.
Peter, as a family office, I'm sure you have a number of private investments in your portfolio. How do you think about CloudCover in the sense that, you invested, your original thesis was just, let's say, hey, here's an interesting cybersecurity company, okay? But now, 4 years later, all of a sudden, AI, data centers, like there's no question the need and global expansion of data itself is probably 1,000-fold since you made the initial investment. So how are you thinking about that in regards to the family office portfolio?
Well, it's we tend, we have a number of cyber investments, fairly significant in that, and I guess we always want to keep ahead of the trends and everything, so always been a supporter of new technology in that, and they all don't work necessarily, but it's the ones that do are usually pay well for the ones that don't. But yeah, I think you're right that we invested 5 years ago, but I didn't anticipate AI to be as big as it's, and I know it's really a race between the US and China, and China's got the US has the chips, and China has the power, and it's going to take a long time for the US to catch up on the power. But I just know just from my research and that the amount of the data, like you say, it's 1,000 times. It's going to be 1,000 times what it was a while ago. So, and I think the size of when you get that much concentration of data, that one significant breach could be in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And like you said, with Land Rover, and these are so, there's no way that you're going to be operating these without some kind of insurance in place. So that's, I do see, that's Stefan's original vision of tying in insurance with being able to analyze the risk and in real time, should be a pretty significant opportunity.
And are you typically a passive investor, or are you active?
Well, you can only be active in so many, and I'm probably a bit too active in too many, but mostly passive, I would say. Yeah. But
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah. I remain really impressed that you made this investment, and just it really feels like you're in the catbird seat. And I don't know, but obviously you have a number of cyber investments, so you're well educated in the space. It's impressive.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. Stefan, talk to me about the domestic market versus the global market.
Good question. Well, domestic meaning North America, and the rest of the world, i.e., I'd say you almost have to go continent by continent. But the North American continent is probably about 70% of our opportunity, or greenfield opportunity, in terms of competing and basically coming in with a differentiation, the cybersecurity insurance, incrementally speaking, data insurance. As for the cybersecurity side, the actual technology of protecting networks and so forth, I believe the other side of the planet, i.e. the Asia Pacific region, Europe, and even Africa, is greenfield. Now, all of the other side of that so-called platform that we could call CloudCover, the risk-aware control and risk transfer. The risk transfer does have a significant way to play over in the Asia Pacific region as well as Europe when it comes to basically insurance systems and methods. The idea of digital risks, digital currency, cryptocurrency, blockchain, and everything that has to do with AI. Like Peter was saying, the data centers are just exploding overseas. I mean, they're being built everywhere, especially where you have large metropolitan organizations, cities, smart cities. And most of the smart cities are not here in the United States. They're actually in Asia. They're starting to become more prevalent in Europe, and they're starting to introduce some of the fastest transmission environments like 5G, and they're starting to talk about 6G. Africa happens to have the most significant upgrade version of a telecommunication infrastructure in terms of 5G. And everything is transmitted, bought and sold by your mobile device over there. Digital everything is pretty much the way everything's happening. Paper is literally like 0.5%, 1% of basically what's going on over in Africa. Now, when we're talking about basically here in North America, there is starting to become some reality starting to pop up in the world of basically, processing speeds and data centers and so forth, and trying to actually what happens where, somebody gets hacked or a data center gets hacked. I mean, you're going to hear about that soon. Data centers themselves are going to get breached.
Yeah.
We believe, and it may be audacious of us, but we believe we are the only way to protect data in a data center and secure it and insure it for the sake of its transmission, efficacy or, risk. That being the case, what happens when you have AI topping basically hacking? I mean, that's what they're using right now. AI bots are being used to actually hack into networks. That's why they're being successful. Well, it's going to take AI to fight AI. And our algorithms can actually detect and understand things faster than they being the AI bots, because we can see anomalies which are unique and quite frankly, very, very creative. Sometimes they change right in front of your eyes, literally.
Right.
That's called a TLS handshake, when they knock on the door and say, "Hey, we're here. We'd like to talk to you." That's what the whole world's based on. What we call the internet, TLS, or TCP/IP is what another term is called. That is where everything is going to meet. And if you're not right there at that point, incrementally, and actually being able to address the risk of that transmission or that TLS handshake, and then secure it and insure it, everything else is basically too late. It's already happened.
Huh. And so, you said you felt that you were really the only solution to protect data at data centers. Can you talk about that more? Can you expand on that?
Well, when you see data basically moving in and out of infrastructures, it's kind of hard to explain it as a physical location. Data basically can sit in what's called I guess you call it, it's not a static sort of phase, it's actually in a kind of flux. We believe data only has a value or usefulness when it's moving. When it's static and it's been stored or it's been backed up, it already has a half-life of about 5-6 minutes. If you think about it, data is constantly being updated and upgraded and updated all the time now in today's information age. Whereas maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, people were talking about recovery and backup and so forth. Backup is like almost becoming somewhat almost a non sequitur. You basically have to have real-time data. Now, with that understanding, or if you want to call it belief structure, in motion real-time data, quite frankly, is where the data center resides. I mean, data centers are not sitting there static. They're constantly sending and receiving data, transmission, and updating what do you call it, log files, transaction files, history. It's constant, it's always, especially when we're getting into the world of AI. AI is constantly starting to become what we call, fluxing. LLMs are constantly updating, realigning, updating, talking between themselves. And all of that information is not necessarily being protected. And the only way to protect it, we believe, is to basically uniquely identify it, tag it, stain it, if you want to call it that, in a way for its risk profile, its efficacy, even its compliance. And when we talk about compliance, we're talking about sovereignty, GDPR. I mean, where is your data? Well, with all due respect, Europe has got a big problem about that right now. And of course, we are looking at sovereignty of data as being one of the things we would be able to actually ensure and certify and protect. Where is it? When is it? How is it being used? How is it being accessed? And so when you talk about data centers, again, they're becoming somewhat, in a way, the heart and soul, if you will, of the information age. Not your corporations where they have a server in the back room or some kind of cloud-enabled device or a blade server down the street. Majority of all the information is going to be coming in and out of these, I guess I'll call them, REITs, if you will, like the Equinixes of the world, Digital Realty, AWS, Googles of the world.
And do you have partnerships for them?
We began to start talking to Equinix about 3 years ago. We didn't want to take that one down the street too fast. Now we're ready to come back and revisit with them. As for AWS and Google, well, they're basically kind of once you open that door, you got to have all your ducks in a row. And we haven't actually approached Google. We have been actually, kind of knocking on the door a little bit with AWS. But in January, February, we're bringing on a very high-powered sales engineer from AT&T who's joining us in the next 30 to 50 days. And he has the withdrawal and the connections to actually access and talk to people like that. There's another company that we're going to be doing business with shortly. It's called Ariaka Networks, and they're out of San Francisco. I'd say about 15 to 17% of the internet traffic goes through their networks.
Huh. Okay. What sectors do you think are going to be the most promising, both here and abroad?
Well, the infrastructure called just the entire telecommunication infrastructure. But if you want to go into sectors, fintech, insurtech, obviously, because we will be basically an unusual and a very different type of capability in that space. Healthcare. And healthcare is going to be more and more and more concerning. That's where identity meets basically, the society's capability of being able to know who is what and tracking disease and all sorts of other issues, as we well know from about 4 years ago when, of course, the pandemic actually, showed up and everybody was like not prepared. Then there's basically the idea of mobility. We're talking now about, AI being in your so-called presence all the time, not just on your phone, but possibly a wearable. Things that actually record everything in your life. I believe that we're going to have a counterbalance to that, so-called saturation of letting AI into our world of humans and be able to kind of check that privacy security point between AI having complete control over everything and not having a kill switch. And the idea of what true privacy and security looks like. And the other time,
How do you look at what I'll call surface data, right? Data from IoT, which is really just sending out signals, versus deep data, right? Where like how I'm using, let's say, some of these LLMs, or how someone that's doing biotechnology drug research would be using AI and some of these LLMs. How do you look at that?
Well, large language models basically are really, quite frankly, just what they are. I mean, they're basically it's taking language of anything that we've actually developed and using and utilizing it to actually help us with, writing books and writing and articulating messages and, even emails and all sorts of things that they're starting to actually try to use it for imaging and so forth, but it's actually kind of failing a little bit. Then there's the other side of, I guess I'd call it mathematical AI, algorithmic AI. And that's where we are, but that side of the world of AI is going to expand dramatically. And algorithmic AI is in some ways part and parcel of some of the things that Google actually, accomplished with the search engine capabilities. And some other organizations are using right now in certain spaces where they're measuring the whole idea of identifying metrics and being able to identify all the things that you were just talking about in terms of deeper machine learning, if you want to go there, is basically I would say it's untapped. There may be people in there, at the university level and research level, talking about how they can deploy it, apply it, and use it for 3D printing and basically, manufacturing methods, food production, more efficient ways to actually, feed more people with less resources, power, energy efficiency systems, batteries, things like that. And then autonomous vehicles, the smart city with sensors all over the place, talking to transmission, transactions, transport systems. And then you've got the unknown, what's above us. Like, we got, Starlinks and new companies coming online to compete with people like Starlink. And then you've got even further out, you've got transactions, transmissions of things that are going to happen in the area of space research and, things that have to do with even, transporting ourselves to the moon and Mars. I mean, a lot of that stuff is basically going to need some security and protection and insurance.
So one of the things that made Warren Buffett a multi-billionaire was reinsurance. And I'm wondering, like, if a reinsurance company would be a great investor for you, in the sense that, theoretically, you could insure all the world's data. Can you talk about how ubiquitous this technology is and how far, how far you can really spread the CloudCover technology and algorithms?
Well, CloudCover does have a subsidiary called CloudCover RE. We anticipated reinsurance 12 years ago, actually, getting prepared for that. We have actually been in partnership previously with Munich Re, one of the largest reinsurers in the world. Some large London brokers actually have been, working with us, talking to us, discussing ways they can actually work with us, and we were working with them. We basically, in the last year, we had a repivot of our entire software system, and now we're at a point where we're coming back and we're going to revisit with the reinsurance markets. Yes, we do intend on playing in the reinsurance market. Both in Bermuda, as well as onshore, as well as in the London markets, as well as possibly even the Asia Pacific region. As for reinsurance, what it is capital that basically insures insurance, or it provides capital for insurance companies to write more premium, per se. It also de-risks basically the entire insurance industry because it spreads the risk somewhat, in a more homogeneous way. We believe that we could actually write more than 10 times risk capital, which right now the insurance industry currently, the way policies are 1 year long or maybe 2 years long, they open and then they stay open for, until the claim is made or the policy is renewed. They can only write 3 times premium. We could start with 10 times premium because we've actually modeled it And we believe we could even get up into these spaces in places of maybe 30 to 40 times premium. So if you take reinsurance capital and you bring it in and you say for 100 million, basically capital, whether it's coming in from investment or you've actually borrowed the money, you can basically write enough premium where you're not going to be paying claims, because the claims are actually on a claims made basis. That's a term that the insurance industry uses. And the reinsurance markets, they do not tell insurance companies how to adjust their claims, but our claims would actually be adjudicated within literally seconds. So after the transaction data has actually, been identified and insured, the return on investment, if you will, is going to be more than 10 to 15 times the premium income, meaning that you're going to be able to take in premium, not pay out claims. Well, that's what usually the house, in Las Vegas tries to do. The house always wins if they're going to sustain their operations. Well, insurance is not necessarily a gamble. It's actually a picking of the so-called risk winners. And if you can identify data risk as it happens, you can potentially stop it or address it or mitigate before it cascades, which is what a data breach is. We would never, ever, ever experience a cascading data breach. We would actually neutralize the claims and pay them faster, smaller, quicker, and be able to actually pile in more reinsurance capital, acquire more reinsurance interest, because we would be able to do something that nobody else has been able to figure out, which is basically de-risking the entire internet transaction, or immunize the internet, inoculate the internet. That's what my idea, my dream is.
That's amazing. Peter, can you talk about how CloudCover fits in with the rest of your cybersecurity portfolio?
It's the only product that sort of has an insurance component to it. Most of the others are sort of, like strategy is a fairly large investment. A lot of the what we're seeing now too is a lot of the Bitcoin miners are switching over to data centers, actually, because they've got contracts, they've got long-term contracts with electricity in that, and you're seeing whereas a Bitcoin miner would trade at maybe 4 or 5 times kind of revenue, you're seeing some of these that are switching over to their market cap's going up to 20 times, and it's all a big gold rush right now with AI. It's every and it's about generating electricity. So that's kind of the area. We're also kind of, we range from a farm in Uganda to a fire emergency fire. It's lots of different businesses. So it's those are probably a little bit more where I'm active.
Right. I mean, one thing is Stefan is such an intelligent, such an experienced CEO, and he seems like a brilliant guy. Frankly, the more time I spend with him, the more I'm impressed. So I would imagine that your voice is not as needed for something like CloudCover as it is for. I'm nothing against the farm in Uganda, but that seems like something you probably have to be pretty hands-on with.
It's very technical. I'm not about to profess it, but I've got that. There's lots of acronyms in that I kind of go over my head.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, Stefan, last question before we go to audience questions, which is, can you talk about your go-to-market strategy? Are you going direct? Are you going to be partner-led? What's the thesis there?
Hybrid. We're going to be basically direct, and we're going to be going to a resell environment where our product is going to be available through folks like Ariaka Networks, telecommunication infrastructure, where they can actually take our product and offer it to their customer base, both the individual as well as the corporate side. When I say direct, we're talking about the fintech going straight to the large, financial institutions. We're already inside of banks, and we're into, some counties, state and local governments. When it comes to basically the healthcare industry, I would say that's probably more of a direct hospital environments like Kaiser, or major significant hospitals like Mayo, which is just down the street from us here in Minneapolis, and things like the education industry. We would have a significant impact on protecting both online education as well as children and the busing industry, for example.
Right.
Transportation is another area that we're very interested in, and that happens to have a little bit to do with transport cargo as well as the agricultural industry.
Right. And are you working with the DoD? I mean, asymmetric warfare, drones, all of this is such a new paradigm, but it's all data driven. So I'm just curious if you've had conversations with those guys.
We've had conversations with them, but we've had on and off. And quite frankly, getting involved with the DoD, they want a backdoor.
Right. Interesting.
We're kind of uncomfortable with backdoors.
Right. Right. Okay. That's great. I respect that. I mean, that was Apple Computer's stance for decades.
We would engage the government, but we'd go through a third party where they could offer the product and sell it directly to them. We're not big enough to really make an impact on the government yet, the federal government, I'd say. But if we were approached by, the government in about, I'd say 18 months from now, maybe 24 months, we would be willing to, offer the product to them. And it would be very useful, obviously, with, communications to drones and all sorts of other technologies
Sure.
that are actually involved. But necessarily right now, we're kind of leaving the government sort of, off to the side for a moment.
Gotcha. Callie, there's a few audience questions. I don't want to leave them out, so I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, and actually, there were several more, which Stefan actually covered a lot of them in his conversation. So,
Super.
do you want to get into talking about the raise itself and what can you outline the milestones of this particular raise that will help you, what it will help you achieve, and how that positions you for the larger institutional rounds ahead?
Good question. Well, right now we're at a 10 million raise. We've raised approximately to date about 12.5 million. I'd say about 7 of that is equity and the remaining is debt. The 10 million raise that we're doing now is a preferred Series A. It is also got an oversubscription of 5 million. We're thinking of actually considering 5 million of debt to take out the debt we currently have, or at least replace it with better options, better terms. As for the funds that we're using it for, about 40% of the 10 million would be used for sales and marketing. About 20 to 22% would be used for R&D. 20% for sales and channel services. That's our partnerships and the folks that we were talking about earlier, Ariaka Networks, Equinix, the relationship we're thinking about putting together right now, which we're working on overseas. We're actually traveling to Hong Kong in about 2 weeks to meet up with some fairly interesting folks over there on a footprint on the Asia Pacific region. 8 to 9% for technology services and 10% for administration.
Great. And what does an exit look like for investors? What should they expect?
We're interested in actually considering an exit fairly soon. What I mean by soon, I'd say we need to get the value of the organization established and stabilized on a growing pathway. And I mean a hockey stick. When you start to, hockey stick and the inflection point is coming up here in the next spring, give or take, we're looking at possibly 3 to 5 years out. We would be interested in, i.e., a merger. And the question of the day has been, who would be that candidate or the merger candidate? Would a large, organization like Google or somebody like that be interested in somebody like us? Or would a private equity group be willing or interested in something like what we're doing? Because what we're accomplishing and what we are going to be is going to be a considerably different animal than a cybersecurity solution or a cyber insurance solution, or a digital exchange solution. We're going to be a kind of a mashup of all three. And so it's possible, but I doubt it is possible that somebody might come in and say, we just want the security. We just want the insurance. We want to actually take the digital exchange and go off with it. It might break up into three pieces, but we do want to get out of this situation of running this organization. And we do want to scale it fast. And so we're trying to get ourselves into a place where 3 to 5 years from now, will be a very, very lucrative target, because people are going to actually look at us and say, my God, you got a bunch of data, interesting data, data about data, metadata, if you want to call it, about risk. And that will be a unique, interesting opportunity to have access, or if you will, ownership of something like that. So I hope that answers your question. I know it's kind of a little
no, it actually did. And actually, I think you answered this last question is, and what does the scaling model look like over the next 12 to 24 months?
Well, we actually have projected approximately about 160 to 175 million by the end of 2028. As we get into 29, we're going to have revenues coming in from three different directions, as I was saying earlier. Primarily, though, we think the revenue maker, the greatest opportunity, is going to be basically in the insurance risk, insurance, reinsurance of data.
Well, that concludes all of the audience questions. If anyone out there has additional questions, you can reach out to me. Everyone has my email address. I'm happy to facilitate an introduction to CloudCover. In turn, they will have all of your information as well, and we'll be reaching out. Stefan, I do want to turn it back over to you for any final words before we close out today.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your members, and CloudCover is, in essence, I think time has come. It's at this moment in time that data is our lifeblood, if you will, of the information age. And there needs to be an answer, a better answer to protecting and ensuring it for the sake of security and privacy. So, I mean, I appreciate your effort, your time for listening and hearing us out. And I'll be available for anybody's questions if they actually want to throw something on an email and send it to me.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Peter, for joining us today as well.
You bet.
And thank you to the audience. And I hope everyone has a great day.